She cheated with the plumber, then tried to destroy him. Subscribe now, before you hear the part she didn't see coming. San Diego had never felt colder to her. Even in the peak of summer, the weather was warm, the skies predictably blue, but inside Veronica's home, inside her marriage, there was nothing but chill. At 35, Veronica should have been thriving. Her beauty hadn't faded, it had sharpened. Sculpted cheekbones, long chestnut hair that curled naturally, and eyes that knew how to withhold just enough. She used to work in public relations, knew how to control a room with one look, but all of that had been shelved, packed away the moment she married Robert Cole. Robert was a man people listened to, a formidable trial lawyer in downtown San Diego with silvering temples and a voice that cut like precision steel. Everyone respected him, feared him, even Veronica once admired him too, until the admiration calcified into silence. She didn't work anymore, not because he forbade it, he didn't need to. He simply reminded her of what a lawyer's wife should look like. Be like. She played the part well. Brunch with the partners' wives. Hosting dinners with plated appetizers she didn't eat. Nodding during stories that bored her numb. Their home in La Jolla was pristine. Modern. Cold. Almost museum-like. Polished surfaces. Strategic lighting. But nothing personal. No photos. No mess. Veronica often stared at her own reflection in the glass, wondering when she'd stop being seen. On Thursday morning, she was standing by the outdoor sink in the backyard, rinsing strawberries, when the ring slipped off. Or maybe it didn't slip. Maybe it fell with intent. It hit the metal basin, bounced once, and rolled toward the drain, a glint of gold vanishing with a hollow clink. She stared at the grate for a long moment before bending down. Fingers brushing metal, but it was already gone. She stood up slowly, dried her hands, walked inside, and opened her phone. Pipeworks Plumbing 24 hours emergency response. She dialed. A man answered, calm, efficient. Someone will be there within the hour, he said. An hour, that gave her time. Veronica changed into a white cotton dress, effortless, elegant, not overdone. Just open enough at the neckline to appear accidental. She left her hair loose, brushed gloss onto her lips. Just a touch. By the time the knock came, she was ready. She opened the door and found him standing there. Miguel, 28, maybe younger, tan skin, lean build, eyes that didn't shift too fast or too slow. He had a clipboard in one hand and a canvas bag of tools in the other. Mom, he nodded. Please. She smiled. Veronica. She led him through the house, past the marble kitchen, the spotless floors, the echoing emptiness. The ring went down the drain out back, she said, gesturing toward the patio. Miguel knelt, inspecting the drain. He worked quietly, methodically. Veronica stood nearby, arms folded, watching the way his shoulders moved under his shirt. There was something about the way he focused, unbothered by her. But not unaware. Do you lose things often? He asked suddenly. Not looking up, she blinked. Excuse me, just wondering. Most people don't call in a plumber for a ring unless it means something. She hesitated. It's my wedding ring. Miguel nodded. Got it. There was a pause. Veronica stepped closer. Is it hard, working in homes like this? He glanced at her. A flick of the eyes. Sometimes. Because of the people. Because of what they want. Their eyes locked, just a second too long. Then his phone buzzed. A message. He didn't answer it. Inside his shirt pocket, tucked just beside his pen, was a small black object no larger than a key fob. A recorder. Still running. He went back to work. Robert called at 4:30. Veronica stepped inside to answer. Hey, how's the afternoon going? Fine, just doing some gardening. I got the alert about the water use. What happened? I dropped my ring in the drain. Getting it looked at. A pause. You still wearing it? She looked down at her bare finger. Of course, she lied. Okay, let me know if you need anything. I always do. She hung up, turned around, and found Miguel standing at the sliding glass door. His arms were crossed, not judgmental, just aware. Everything okay? he asked. Always. He didn't smile, just nodded and walked back to the drain. The job took longer than expected. Veronica offered water. He declined. She brought it anyway. Their fingers touched when he took it. His didn't pull away. I'll have to remove part of the pipe, he said. She nodded. Take all the time you need. He worked in silence. Veronica stood in the shadow. Her figure blurred against the setting sun behind her. She didn't say what she was thinking. She didn't need to. When he finally stood, wiping his hands, she was standing closer than before. Did you find it? She asked. No. He looked down, but maybe it wasn't lost. That night, she placed the white dress into the laundry. She checked the drain again. Still empty. Then she looked at herself in the mirror. Bare-fingered, breath shallow. For the first time in a long time, she looked alive. Down the road, Miguel sat in his car, turned off the engine, removed the small recorder from his pocket, pressed stop, and replayed everything, just once, then saved the file. She hadn't planned it. Or maybe she had. The line between spontaneity and suppressed desire blurred like steam on glass as Veronica leaned against the cool granite counter. Watching Miguel pour water from the jug she'd handed him. She had invited him in because of the heat. At least that's what she would later tell herself. And maybe others if needed. It's too hot to work out there. Come cool off, she had said with a smile that clung too long to his face. The midday sun had baked the backyard tiles to the point of shimmer. But the air inside wasn't any cooler. It was just denser, thicker with something unnamed. He accepted her offer without question, not because he was naive, and certainly not because he was thirsty. He had felt it too, the weight of her gaze when he'd crouched by the drain. The way her words slowed just slightly when she asked how long the job would take. He was used to being watched. But not like this. Now, inside her marble and glass kitchen, Veronica moved like she hadn't in years. With intention, with suggestion, her fingers brushed against his when she passed him the glass. He didn't flinch, but his knuckles stiffened, a small inhale escaping him, barely audible. But she caught it. I used to love this kind of heat, she said, her voice low and soft, carrying more heat than the weather ever could. But it's different now, stifling, like it follows you inside. Miguel's eyes met hers for the first time since stepping through the door. He had a way of looking that wasn't searching, it was knowing. Quiet, but grounded. He didn't ask what she meant. He just watched, listened. I guess I thought marriage would feel warmer. Instead, it's just quieter. Still no comment, but his silence wasn't rejection. It was tension, deliberate, and growing. She stepped closer, one bare foot soundless against the tiles. The hem of her sundress brushed her knees as she leaned forward. Do you talk much, Miguel? She asked, smiling. The edges of her lips curled like a secret. Only when people mean what they're saying, he replied, his voice like velvet pulled tight. Veronica laughed, not loudly, just enough to let it linger in the charged space between them. Then, without permission or apology, she closed that space. Her hand slid up to the collar of his work shirt. He didn't stop her, didn't move, but when she pulled herself in closer and their lips met, it wasn't tentative. It wasn't experimental. It was the sound of something forbidden clicking into place. The kiss was warm, then hot, then dangerous, her hands in his hair, his fingers at her waist, her back pressed to the counter, then spun. Then footsteps echoing softly up the stairs. She didn't speak as they entered the bedroom, didn't turn on the light, didn't close the curtains. The sunlight cut in sharp lines across the bed. The sheets turned down as if waiting. She pulled the dress over her head without ceremony. No seduction, just shedding, and maybe that's all it was for her in that moment, peeling off a life that had stopped fitting. Miguel stood still. He didn't ask, he followed. The next 20 minutes passed in silence. No dirty talk, no giggles, no laughter, just breath, skin, and the creak of a mattress that had likely not been touched like that in years. When they finished, she turned her head to the window and stared at the way light painted across the carpet. He watched her, and for the first time since walking in, looked uncertain. He dressed first, Didn't speak, didn't ask for her number, didn't mention the job, just nodded once and left. The door clicked shut behind him. And that was when Veronica exhaled. Not relief, not guilt, something closer to disbelief. She lay still on the bed, feeling the sweat cool on her skin, her heart thudding in the hollow of her chest. Then, slowly, her hand reached across to the nightstand and picked up her phone. No messages from Robert, just an old missed call from earlier that morning. She didn't return it. Instead, she stared at the sheets, at the indent his body had left, at the sunlight now crawling higher up the wall. She had left the sheets unmade deliberately. She didn't want to forget how it felt to be desired, to be the one choosing. But it didn't take long for that thought to curdle. It started with a shallow breath, then a rush of questions. Why did he not say anything when he left? Did he feel disgust? Was it just another job to him? Was it a mistake? She sat up abruptly, wrapping the bedsheet around herself though there was no one to see. Her pulse was still racing, but not from arousal now. From something colder, sharper, something that looked like fear. What had she done? She stood, paced, then stopped in front of the mirror. Her reflection startled her. Messy hair, flushed cheeks, eyes that looked too wide, too bright, like a woman waking from sleepwalking into traffic. She tried to tell herself it was harmless. One time, a secret, something forgotten. But the part that scared her most wasn't the affair itself, it was how alive she'd felt during it. And what she was now willing to do to feel that again. Later that evening, Robert came home late as always. Said little, asked less. He poured himself a scotch and disappeared into the home office. Veronica stayed in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through her phone, pretending not to notice the small blue folder on the counter, the one that once held divorce paperwork. He had ripped it up in a fit of anger a few months back. After a fight where she said, "I don't think you love me anymore." Now the pieces were back. She hadn't touched them, but she remembered. Maybe she didn't need Miguel to feel alive. Maybe she needed him to help her escape. That thought slithered into her brain like a dark fog. If Robert knew, if she told him something had happened, if she said Miguel had forced himself on her, it would be her word against his. And she was the wife of a respected man. Miguel was a plumber with no paper trail, no legal backing, no reputation to protect. She sat down at the kitchen table, looked at the phone, didn't text, didn't delete his number either. She left the sheets unwashed that night. Not out of nostalgia this time, but out of calculation. The smell of him was fading, but the idea of him, what he represented, was only just beginning to take shape. The ring was still at the bottom of the drain. She hadn't asked him to retrieve it. Maybe because she didn't want it back. Not yet. Maybe never. Miguel didn't start his truck right away. He sat in the driver's seat. Engine silent. The air inside the cab a mix of sweat, vinyl, and quiet calculation. The sun glared through the windshield, baking the dash, but he didn't reach for the AC. Instead, he reached for his phone, slid up the recording app he always kept docked to his home screen. Tapped, save. The file timestamped itself automatically, 2:16 p.m. Tuesday. He named it Veronica_initial_encounter. Everything had been recorded, from the moment she opened the gate, to her breathless words just before pulling him upstairs. Especially one sentence, whispered like a blade between silk sheets. "If I told my husband you forced me, I could finally leave." Miguel sat still, the edges of his jaw tightening, remembering that moment. The heat wasn't just outside, it was in the way her voice curved. In the way her fingers laced around his wrist like it was all a performance she'd rehearsed before. He'd seen it before, years ago, back when he was 24, doing a job in La Mesa. A married woman had invited him in. She'd cried, claimed her husband was violent, that she just needed someone to talk to. It wasn't until days later, after he turned her down, that he got the knock on his door from police. Indecent conduct with a married woman, they said. He fought the case, beat it, but the scars didn't vanish. He lost jobs, lost trust. He never got the full story of what she'd told them, but he remembered her eyes. The way they shifted when they knew they had power. So now, Miguel recorded everything, every job, every visit, every conversation, not out of paranoia, out of pattern recognition. He pulled up the new file and listened. Her voice filled the cab. Soft and breathy, dripping with manipulation. "If I told my husband you forced me." He locked the phone, placed it face down on the passenger seat, and started the engine. The truck rumbled to life. But inside, Miguel was already on alert. This wasn't just another client. This was a woman who looked like she'd already drawn the battle lines. He just hadn't seen the field yet. Across town, Veronica was also making moves. That evening, she texted her best friend, Allison. The message was short, crafted to look offhand but heavy with suggestion. "Hey, remember that plumber I told you about? He's been texting kinda weird. Not sure if I'm overthinking, but I feel like he's watching me." Then, 10 minutes later, another message. "Anyway, hope I'm wrong, just feels off. I might ask Rob to look into it." Veronica stared at the screen after pressing send. Her hands were steady, her breathing wasn't. It wasn't panic, it was construction. She was laying the foundation. Each step, each sentence, designed to be pulled later as proof. She was planting the idea early, so if it ever came to confrontation, she wouldn't appear reactionary. She'd be the woman who saw it coming, who warned someone, who was scared before the story got told. She pulled up her thread with Miguel. Nothing explicit there, not really. She'd kept things carefully casual, careful not to seem too forward. But just in case, she began selectively screenshotting the chat. She scrolled, tapped, cropped, anything that sounded off. She preserved a "thanks for today" winking face from her, followed by a "no prob. Let me know if you need more help." Innocent enough, until paired with accusation. She knew how context could bend. Still, she had to be thorough. She hovered over one particular message. It was the one she regretted. "You looked good today," sent 3 hours after the affair. Pure impulse, pure craving. She deleted it almost instantly. But she had no idea how quickly Miguel saw it, or if he screenshot it himself. That worried her. She double-checked her phone, then deleted it again, even though it was long gone. Her hands trembled just slightly. Because despite the careful staging, the first seeds of fear were germinating. She wasn't dealing with a stupid man. Miguel hadn't acted like a fool. He hadn't lingered, hadn't flirted before or after, hadn't even looked shaken, just quiet, calm, watchful. It unsettled her. Meanwhile, Miguel wasn't waiting. The next morning, he sat on the tailgate of his truck, parked under the shade of a gas station overpass, and dialed a number from memory. "Hey, Saul," he said when the line picked up. "You still got that contact in legal services?" The man on the other end, an old friend from a community support project Miguel had helped years ago, laughed. "You finally get into trouble?" "Not yet," Miguel said, "but someone might try to put me there." He sent the recording, didn't explain it, just said, "Keep this on file, just in case." After hanging up, Miguel sat still. The rumble of cars passed overhead like distant thunder. He watched the sky. It was too blue, too quiet. He knew what was coming. Not if, but when. Later that week, Veronica met Allison for coffee. She leaned in with just enough worry in her brow. "I know it sounds crazy," she said, stirring her spoon in empty motion. "But he's been driving by again. I think." Allison blinked. "Are you sure?" Veronica shook her head. "No, I mean, not 100%. But yesterday, I saw his truck parked 2 streets down. And today I swear I saw him again. Near the gym. I haven't even called him since. It's just weird." Allison's eyes narrowed. "Should you tell Rob?" Veronica bit her lip. Just a flicker, then a shrug. "I don't want to make a big deal. What if it's nothing?" Allison nodded, sympathetic, believed her. Miguel's name was now a whisper waiting to echo. That night, Veronica stood in the doorway of her bedroom, looking at the unwashed sheets. Still unlaundered, still stained faintly with memory. She hadn't touched the bed since the affair. She'd been sleeping on the couch, telling Robert she had back pain. He hadn't questioned it. She wondered what Miguel thought of her now. Did he believe she wanted more? Did he think she was clinging? Did he realize she was setting a trap? Or worse, did he know and simply not care? Veronica wasn't used to men being unaffected. She was used to power, used to control. Miguel didn't seem like someone she could intimidate. That made him dangerous. She began drafting another text. "Hey, I think we should talk," but didn't send it. Her thumb hovered, her stomach twisted, not with guilt, but with the gnawing discomfort of a woman who suddenly wasn't sure which one of them was the real predator. Across town, Miguel replayed the file again, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to be ready. He began trimming the audio, noting timestamps, highlighting Veronica's key statements. "My husband wouldn't believe you anyway. You want me, don't you? Don't say anything, just do it." Each one marked, isolated, stored. The game had begun, but only one of them knew it was already the second half. The lie didn't taste like fear. It tasted like survival. Veronica stood barefoot in the foyer, her voice sharp with panic, but her hands trembling just enough to sell it. Robert had just returned home. His briefcase was still in his left hand when she met him at the door. Wide-eyed, breathless, the words already rolling from her tongue like a train with no brakes. "He came back." Robert blinked, barely through the threshold. "Who?" "The plumber," she whispered, then louder. "Miguel." His name cracked the silence. Her lip quivered. "The left one. Always the left one." Robert dropped the briefcase by the door, slowly straightening. "What happened?" Veronica stepped closer, just 2 feet away, wrapped in the thin robe she had thrown on deliberately, enough to look vulnerable. Not exposed. "I didn't know how to tell you," she whispered, voice breaking. He forced himself on me. That day, I didn't say anything because I was ashamed. But now he's showing up. Driving by. I'm scared, Robert. I didn't want to lie anymore." The pause that followed was long. Robert was many things: stern, disciplined, often unreadable, but not stupid. And in that moment, he was quiet not because he believed her, but because he knew what kind of world this would create. "Why now?" he asked, voice low. I couldn't hold it anymore." She forced a sob. "I thought I could forget. But I can't. He was here. He touched me. I said no." She felt his eyes on her. Not soft, not pitying, calculating. And yet, he said what she needed. "We're pressing charges." She nodded, gratefully, tearfully, but inside, the theater was already draining her. The next day, the detective came, a woman, early 40s, tired eyes, not unkind, but disillusioned. She sat at the table, laid a small recorder down, and asked Veronica to recount what had happened. Veronica repeated the story, softer this time, a little less polished. The detective took notes. They asked for the clothes she wore. Veronica said she washed them. They asked about evidence. Veronica said she panicked. They asked about the scene. Veronica said she cleaned the sheets. Still, the detective nodded, calm, reassuring. "We'll look into it." And they did. The first time they knocked on Miguel's door, he didn't panic. He opened it with calm eyes and a tucked-in shirt. Listened as they asked questions. Listened when they said Veronica had made a statement. Listened as they told him the accusations. Then he walked to his desk, sat down, and opened his laptop. "I thought something like this might happen," he said, opening a folder marked Client Recordings. He clicked on the file labeled Veronica_initial_encounter and pressed play. Veronica's voice came through the speakers, playful, teasing, uncoerced, then hungry, then manipulative. "If I told my husband you forced me, I could finally leave. Don't stop. I want this. I want you. Just pretend you can't help it." The detectives didn't speak. He let the file run all the way to the sound of the bedroom door closing. 34 minutes of audio. Clean, uninterrupted. Then he opened his email. Forwarded the file to them with a time-stamped backup sent days prior to an attorney in the system. When it ended, he looked at him, no smile, no fear. "Would you like the video too?" he asked. They didn't answer, but they left quietly. That evening, Veronica waited. Robert didn't come home at his usual time. She cooked dinner, poured wine, changed into something soft, non-threatening. At 10:34 p.m., he arrived. No briefcase, no tie, just eyes that no longer blinked the same. He walked past her, into the living room, sat down. Veronica followed, heart in her throat. "Well?" she asked, voice high and tight. Robert looked at her like a man watching a stranger. "They have the recording," he said. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. "Yes." Silence. "I can explain," she stammered, voice cracking. "I didn't mean. He tricked me. He manipulated me. You said he raped you." I was scared. "No," he said. "You were calculated." She stepped back like slapped. Robert stood. His voice remained flat, not yelling, just tired. "I thought you needed help, Veronica. For years. I thought if I just worked less, listened more, maybe you'd come back. But you weren't missing. You were just hiding behind this perfect wife role, waiting for a moment to detonate." Tears welled in her eyes. Real ones this time, but not from guilt, from fear. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said. Robert looked at her, truly looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time without illusion. "You told me he hurt you. You let me go to the police with you. Sit there while you lied." His voice cracked slightly at the end. "Just once." Veronica stepped closer. "Robert, please." He shook his head, stepped back. "I think you need help. But not from me, not anymore." He paused, then added, "You didn't just throw your ring down the drain. You threw the whole marriage with it." She didn't move as he walked upstairs. Didn't call after him. She just stood there, in the same robe she'd worn when she told the lie, and felt the floor under her become unfamiliar. Somewhere in her mind, she remembered the first night they'd moved into the house. The way he'd carried her across the threshold. How light she'd felt then. Now, she felt like lead. Later, when she was alone again, she opened her phone, scrolled through the messages with Miguel. Deleted some, saved others. She didn't even know what she was trying to erase anymore. Her reflection in the window caught her off guard, eyes too wide. Face pale, mouth slightly open, like she was waiting for someone to shout cut, and end the scene. But no one came. She sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the carpet. For the first time in years, Veronica had no script, and the silence was louder than any accusation. Veronica blinked at the courtroom lights as if they were brighter than they should have been. They weren't, but everything had become too sharp lately, sounds too loud. Colors too harsh, words too final. The judge's voice cut through the air with the precision of someone who'd done this many times before. False reporting of a crime, malicious prosecution, custodial suspension pending further review. Each phrase hit like a cold slap. Each one stripped another layer from what she once thought was her identity. She didn't cry, not in court. She'd used tears before. That currency was now bankrupt. Robert sat 2 rows behind, not looking at her. Their attorneys did the talking now, their body language clean and sterile. Robert's suit was tailored. Her own clothes felt suddenly too tight, like they no longer belonged to a person who could wear them without shame. The custody agreement wasn't even debated. Her son would stay with his father until further review, but they both knew what that meant. Indefinitely. Her lawyer tried to soften the blow. Said she could appeal, but the words were empty. Veronica nodded, lips pressed tight, as if trying to hold in everything that might fall out if she dared to speak. The papers were signed the next week. A courier handed her the envelope like it was just another transaction. A clean white folder that ended a life. The headlines did the rest. Wife WHO falsely accused plumber loses child custody. Divorce finalized. #false accusation trends again after San Diego court ruling. Her name trailed behind every mention like a stain. Comments poured in beneath each post, some calling for jail time. Others dissecting her appearance, her voice, her smirk in old photos. Everyone had an opinion, no one asked her for hers. Her inbox filled with threats. Her voicemail with silence. Her social media was gone by the end of the month, deleted. Erased, like she'd never existed as anything but a cautionary tale. Neighbors stopped saying hello. Some looked through her, others whispered. Veronica moved out of the house within weeks. The court settlement allowed her to keep some savings, enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment on the far side of town. It was beige and boxy, the kind of place that never remembered your name. The walls were thin. She could hear the couple next door fighting over laundry, hear children crying from the unit above. But no one ever knocked on her door. No one ever asked why she never turned on the TV. She spent her days folding and unfolding the same clothes, walking from one room to the other like the walls might suddenly speak back. She didn't hang pictures, didn't unpack everything. She left the wedding ring in a drawer. But some days, she took it out and placed it on the kitchen table, just to look at it, just to see if it had anything left to say. It never did. The ring looked too clean, too round, like a promise made by someone else, one she had put on like a costume and now couldn't return. She tried therapy once, sat across from a woman with soft glasses and a notepad, who asked, "What do you think you lost?" Veronica laughed, not because it was funny, but because the answer was so big. It didn't fit inside language anymore. "Everything I never had," she whispered, "and then everything I destroyed." She didn't go back. She took long walks at dusk, avoided daylight. She liked shadows better. There was less to explain when no one could see your face clearly. Sometimes she'd walk past restaurants or bars and hear women laughing. That was the hardest part. Not the hatred, not the shame, the sound of women who weren't broken. She wondered what they'd think if they knew who was passing by. One night, weeks later, she found herself staring at the corner of her bedroom where the ceiling cracked slightly. There was water damage there, faint but growing. She hadn't reported it. It reminded her of that day. The drain, the sun, the weight of a lie before it had even been spoken. She got up and went to the kitchen, opened her laptop. She still had the email, the one Miguel had sent to the police. She hadn't dared listen before. She hovered her finger over the audio file, then clicked play. Her own voice poured out. Younger somehow, smug, breathless. "You want me, don't you? My husband won't know." She paused the file, swallowed, pressed play again. "If I told him you forced me, I could finally be free." She stopped it. Her hand hovered over the delete button, but she didn't press it. That night, she didn't sleep. The next day, she didn't speak. She sat at the kitchen table, same as always, with the ring resting in front of her. It hadn't moved, still round, still cold, still nothing. She stared at it until the sunlight shifted on the wall, and she finally said something out loud, for the first time in days. "I think I ruined myself more than I ever ruined him." There was no one to hear it, but maybe that was the point. The truth wasn't for anyone else anymore. It never had been. It had always been a mirror. And now, she had no choice but to sit and face it. Because the tape would always exist. Because memory doesn't delete as easily as a file. And because some things, once said, keep echoing in ways even silence can't cover. She framed him to break free. But in the end, she only framed herself. And the truth kept recording. Some lies leave bruises, others leave echoes. But Veronica's lie left a recording, and it never stopped playing. She tried to trap him, but the truth trapped her first. And while her silence now fills an empty apartment in another city, another woman was letting someone in. Again and again. Next on Infidelity Chronicles, Monica from Atlanta. Her monthly plumber visits exposed the cheating affair. A suspicious rise in maintenance bills. A husband who finally decided to look. And a hidden camera that caught everything, including betrayal in its rawest form. Subscribe, because some affairs don't get flushed away. They explode, tile by tile, in the bathroom.